It isn't it weird how like when you're there and you're in their presence, you don't even. It's like it ain't even real. Because when you leave, all of it's gone and nobody believes you. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's like I have this like weird life where like somehow my entire life isn't real. I don't know. Welcome to Crypto Reality. Today we got a great show for you guys. Today we're going to be visiting with John Day. John has been researching for a while now, has also had quite a few experiences. And today we're going to be on Crypto Reality talking about John's experiences with the Sasquatch. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there's a Dogman story coming today. So with that, welcome, John. How are you today?
I'm doing just fine. A little
It's
bit
good
of
to have
history
you.
on myself. I was born in West Virginia, moved away from there, ended up in Louisiana. I married my wife, Wendy, and she's born and raised here in Pierre Park, where we live now. Their family has some land in the swamp, and we do some investigating in the swamps of Louisiana. Curious.
I'll say,
I can
I'll
see
say
she
one
did.
thing. Mark.
Hi, how are you? It's nice to
I'm
meet you.
good. Nice to meet you. Hi, everybody. I'll just say one thing. When I got back, I was upset because I was like, that's my daddy's property, not y'all's. And I started thinking, oh, I better stop thinking like that, because they were there long before. I
It's
think like great grandfather probably built a house back there in probably late 1800s. So I had to change my attitude a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, we all have to, when we come to those realizations, it's like you're going through a natural situation, like this whole, settling that these things are actually real is like one aspect of it. But then now it's like on your property. That's a whole other, I haven't had that experience yet. So, how was that for you?
It felt strange, but then it felt in a way it felt natural too because I started thinking this is where they live. This is where they've been living probably forever. And it's like, who am I to say I don't belong here? But it just felt odd at first because it means a lot to me, the property. And it's like my daddy worked a lot on that property, him and his brothers, to clear out the land and make a trail and everything. And but then I thought, you know what, we could go and we could live together on here. We could do this together. We don't have to be at odds with each other. But I'm still kind of scared when I go out there. But I'm so curious that I just like to do it. I don't care. I'm going to find out.
Of course. And why wouldn't you want to learn about
Yeah.
what's obviously impacting, right? I mean, this is something that's not, it's not like a new species of rabbit. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's not something that you're just going to call a biologist. He's going to come in and go, well, everything's going to be fine. It's a new species of rabbit. Congratulations. You know what I mean? This is one of those things where, they're thinking and they have their own motivations and they have their own, kind of culture that they do whatever they do. And it has everything to do with being embedded in those environments so they can survive.
I mentioned to him about Bigfoot, and all of a sudden I seen it piqued an interest, like he had something. So he told me he knew somebody, which is close, that seen something, but he didn't have a good description of what it was. He said, I got the guy's phone number. He said, I'm going to give it to you. And he gave me the phone number, and I called and talked to this guy. He lives in Florida now. And we talked for, I bet you, an hour and a half. And he described to me what he's seen. And he said he was on the Godell, and they have this place they call the Horseshoe Bayou. So the Godell, well, Godell kind of comes together, I think, but it's on, they call it Bayou, which is really Bell River, but it's a horseshoe that goes off of the main route and then comes back around. So he even pegged it on the maps for me to show me where he had seen it. I think he's seen it at two different places at the same area at that horseshoe. He said the first time he seen it, he was frogging. Both times he was frogging when he seen it. He was coming down south, and he seen some eyes. I think they were red. He said, I'm trying to remember all this. I don't know how accurate it'll be, but he said he had two red eyes. But he said they were low. And he said, well, that might be a panther I'm seeing. So he went home and he talked to his family, and they told him, I said, well, it might be a panther. So another time he's going back, same area, he's coming back, I think same direction. And he told me, I like to frog, I like to look in front. And then every once in a while, I'll flip my headlight back. He said, because I'll catch frogs that I didn't see going, but going down the bayou. But if I flip back, I'll catch them and I'll go back and get them. So he did that at this second location. But when he did that, when he flipped it back around, he seen a dog man. And so while he's describing this to me, I'm thinking Bigfoot, and he's thinking dog man. So he's going through the description. Oh, it was about 7 foot tall, and it was black, and it had red eyes. And he said, then it had pointed ears. And I'm going, wait a minute, pointed ears. And then he said, then it had a muzzle. Oh, I said, time out. I said, are you talking about a dog man? He said, yeah, exactly. He said, how far are you from it? About 15 feet. I said, 15 feet? So you got a good look? Oh, yeah. He said, this thing was built like a linebacker. He said, small waist, big shoulders, huge. He said the arms were the biggest of thighs. He said, this thing was, they always, I talk to people about the guy, and they said, this guy ain't scared of nothing. But he said, he ain't going in them woods for nothing. And he said it was huge. It scared him. And I didn't believe in dogmen till I talked to him. And now I'm going, maybe there is something out there that more than what I think. So he did a lot of research, and it made sense. He says, you can go back in time. You can see these things. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, hieroglyphics in Egypt. What do you see? I say, dog head. I said, yeah. He said, I've been doing a lot of research. And he had a name for him. I can't remember what the name was. He did a lot of research, but he's been doing a lot of research on it. And that was my turning point on the dog man. But I'll tell you something I had experienced up north of there on a lease. And I had my grandson with me, and I never experienced that before. We're sitting there in a box stand, and I'm watching, but I'm uneasy. And I kept looking at a certain spot, just, deer hunting, but I kept going back to that same spot. And all of a sudden I see nothing, but it was like hair, but it was black, and it went across. And I don't usually jump. So when it did that, I jumped. I'm going, what? What was that? But I never seen anything in the woods that was jet black. And it looked like it had long hair, but it was so fast I didn't get an image, but it just freaked me out. That's not far from where he's seeing the dog man.
Where we got paralleled.
And then me and my wife were paralleled there by something which could have been a dog man, which wasn't far from the place he's seen it. We heard it walking in the swamp and the water running off of it. And it paralleled us and it went above us, and then we took off.
You guys could hear the water dripping off this thing? Oh,
yeah, we were that close. But it's the same kind of situation you're in with the palmettos. You can't go see through the palmettos.
That's right.
This thing knew that, apparently, because he came from the back of the boat way off in the swamp. And she heard it before I did. And I had knocked before, like a couillon. But it came towards the boat and turned and like paralleled the boat and paralleled along the bayou or the canal.
Isn't it weird how, like, when you're there and you're in their presence, it's like it ain't even real. Because when you leave, all of it's gone and nobody believes you. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I have this like weird life where like somehow my entire life isn't real. I don't understand. You know what I mean? And like, I'm still doing it every day and it gets done. You know what I mean? It's like, it's crazy. But, looking at those situations, did you ever notice anything when you were on your property that correlates to the experiences you're having in this other area?
Now, on the property, I seen one, but I didn't want to believe what I saw. I was sitting in a ladder stand, and about 30, 40 yards from me, I see a face. But it's not like, I think everybody thinks they're gonna see a Bigfoot. He's gonna pose for them. You're gonna see a full body. You're gonna see a full body, and they're not gonna believe it unless they see a full body. So I was kind of looking, and I said, "Man, that looks like a face. That can't be right. That can't. That's got to be pareidoia." So at the end of the hunt, I get down, and I almost didn't go look. I said, let me go. So I walk over there, and I see the grass is all matted down, and I hear footsteps in the swamp or wading through the swamp. I'm going. And so I turn and I look, and I see a big giant stump, a black stump. That's the way I put it in my mind. I said, man, that's awful tall to be in a rotten stump, a black stump. So I raised my rifle up to try to get it in my scope, and it's not there. So I've dropped my rifle. It's not there. Now, where did it go? I said, I'll be darned. I said, it's got to be. It's got to be.
But situations like what you're describing, where you're within earshot and you should be hearing, like the first time, the reason you went over there was you heard him walking. Yeah. So where'd he go, John?
I think he wanted me to hear him walking.
Yeah, right. But where'd he go, though? That's the question, right? Where did he go?
I have my suspicions. And I'll tell you,
lay him out, please. Lay him out.
I had somebody call me early in the morning on a Sunday morning. Said, go get your gun. I said, get my gun. He said, yeah, come on. This is on the property. I said, what's wrong? I heard something. I said, what'd you hear? He said, something went through the woods like a bulldozer. Really? I said, well, I'll get my gun. Do you have yours? He said, no, go get it. Come pick me up. So he went get his gun and come pick me up. So we went by the same area where I heard the growls and the mumbles and all. Well, he had parked his four-wheeler on top of there, and he walked all the way to the end. And he heard that crash through the woods, and it scared him. And he's familiar with deer. It wasn't deer. It was whatever it was big, or more than one. I said, okay, so let's go. So we go out there, and we walk all the way to the end, and I asked him, okay, where did you hear the noise? So he pointed off in that direction. I said, let's go back. And so we had to come all the way back a little ways and then go around because it was a canal. So we have a land bridge. We went across the land bridge and we went to the spot. I said, okay, made some noise. Let's see what's going on. So we go over there and I find two trackways. One started and then it met up with the other trackway and they went on. So I didn't take pictures, and the only reason was because it was like it was four-legged. Never thought that these things run on fours or twos, whatever they want.
Right.
So I started tracking them back in the woods. So about 100 yards, it stopped. I said, no, wait a minute. So I look up and said, these things went in the trees. And in that one that I had, it went up into the tree. So
I have to agree with you, and that is, that's like, you know, when I found a track that was 18 inches long and it was by itself, for about 30 seconds, I thought about all that other stuff. Yeah. And then I looked at the direction it was moving in, and I went 30 feet, and in that interim, I found his other track. You know, there were no trees around, but that's what I do. I look up. You know what I mean? Yeah. And here's the thing. If you're standing at his track and you have to look up because there's no more tracks, you're not in a good spot. You're not in a good spot already. You literally just followed him to where he's above you. Like, dude. So when I go, like, I look up with the terror of what I might see up in that tree.
Did you look up? He says,
no. I think this was way after. Probably had plenty of time to move out. I think they just kept going. And I think they were young myself.
Those are really good insights. And that's, you know, because I mean, the bottom line is like, we didn't see anything abnormal for almost 10 years. And it wasn't until I found some very specific areas, and they do have a rich, violent history where Native Americans and indigenous populations were slaughtered and they lived for, 1,000 years and all this. there are mound cities, all these areas that we catch these orbs and we see these big balls of light and we find all this stuff going on around the primitive creatures that are like digging holes and crawling in, those kind of things. And so, you know, I always try to keep that separate. You know what I mean? And the reason I do that is because, like you have experienced, we hear them come walking and then we hear them leave on foot. You know what I mean? And then we see them walking and we see them jumping and we don't see them step into a 12-foot round bubble and grab the stick and fly away. You know what I'm saying? That's not what we see. But the orbs do exist, and those things, well, I know they exist. I've personally had one of them flying between my face and my camera while I was shooting. That was the end of it. I'm like, okay, I'm seeing them, and I know they're real, but then all of a sudden it was like, right, you know what I mean? And I'm going, oh, God, and it just went right past my face. I was like, did you just see what just happened to me? And like 3 or 4 people were standing there. It was like, it was one of those moments, man, where you go, okay, this is real. There's no two ways about it. Now I know it's real. How does this relate to the Bigfoot? Do you guys ever see anything like this on your properties? Have you ever gone out at night and tried to see if these things, the orbs and all this?
No, never did. But to confirm a little bit of the prior story I just told you, is when he was taking his game camera, moving it to another tree. He was digging in his four-wheeler, and I heard real faint. So I asked him, "Did you hear that?" But he was digging, making noise. He didn't hear it. I heard it. So that was confirmation to me that some, you know, that one out there was probably what I thought it was. But then when he got back, he sends me a picture of a deer on his game camera, and there was a head. And he said, "Look at this." I said, "Look at this." And I drew an arrow to the head and I said, "What is that?" And he never replied. But those were 2 things that kind of confirmed what happened.
Was that the shot that you sent me with that big ass head in it?
Yeah. Okay.
Because I honestly, to be honest with you, I was like, well, that's obviously one of our subjects. I mean, that's an achromaton. You can see the symmetry, plain as day. The problem is in looking at the actual image, it's strange. I'll just put it that way. And that's not unusual when you catch one of these guys on film. It's usually strange. But that particular image, I didn't actually know what to say about that, because I want to say that that's the symmetry of what I study. I've seen this with my own 2 eyes, the same exact bone structure. It's obviously a different guy, but the way it looks is troubling to me.
The time I set my camera up in West Virginia, I set it up in a tree, and I got pictures of what I think are Bigfoot. We did the same thing over there on the property with that one. We were up 12 foot. Is there a possibility that when they see infrared, they have to see it at a certain angle? Is a downward angle they can't see it? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility that they could miss something. I mean, we've gotten in on them and they've screwed up a few times, more than a few times. Melanie and I just walking in talking, and somebody's napping when they should be paying attention. We've had those situations, but for you to, you know, position a game camera, we have to assume that we have a stationary light, right? And so we're going to have a stationary band, as long as the tree isn't waving, right? And then we get the band's going to wave. Does it come out on a round lens, and does it shoot low? If it's on a round lens, then it's coming out and it's shooting down, out, up, you know what I mean, and forward. But if it's on a different kind of lens, then the track of the beam might not shoot down. That still doesn't explain how they're not seeing the giant red light that's glowing the entire forest, because that's the way I think that they perceive infrared. They don't perceive it as a beam. they perceive it as like there is a red glow in this part of the forest, and I'm going to investigate it cautiously, because what we see is we see them when we do catch them on game cam from a distance trying to crawl up, peeking over things like doing this, or showing like the top of their head and just their forehead, and the game cameras down there. We have the one thing with the candy bar where he takes the candy bar off the stump. He's on game camera the whole time. That thing crawls for 20 minutes and it's only 40 feet, but it's willing to take it that slow so that it doesn't draw any attention on its way to the stump with the payday sitting on top of it, right? It's got a payday candy bar. The guy staged it perfectly. And I really honestly believe that the only reason he caught that creature on film was there was a grade. The infrared went over his head. So he probably felt safe enough coming up to grade, because you can see when he gets on top of that grade and that light is right there, he's shying away from it. And he goes like this and reaches up into the light to get the candy bar. He doesn't stick his head up. So I think that there is something to be said about the infrared just based on the behavior of that one video. That's a very valuable video. And if we take it at face value, then we could say, maybe not conclusively, but with all probability, they do see that infrared. So it was interesting that when they did come out with that video, it was within 2 years that we had game cameras with no red lights on. So I know other people they put stock in the fact they can see infrared because game cameras started being made without infrared, and deer don't have any issue with infrared. You know what I mean? So what's it about? Why are you making cameras with no infrared, since deer can't see them and bear can't see it? And like, what's the deal? You know what I mean? Like they literally gave us the opportunity, Can you place one of those in an air? What do they call those anyway? Without the infrared, they have a name for them. They're like, I can't remember what they call them, but they're excellent, man. There's no infrared. They see at night, no problem. Great cameras. Those are the kind that you like. You put it you find a piece of dead wood, and you hollow it out with a router, and you put that camera inside that piece of dead wood. It doesn't have a red light on it, and then you seal up the back, a little bit, or put a plate on the back and screw it so you can take it off and get the camera, and you set it in your area. Now it's a pinhole in a piece of wood, not a camera. You know what I'm saying? It's a pinhole in a piece of wood, and they're not going to see it. It has no red lights. These are the kind of things that we're moving towards, where we know we're getting followed. Like you guys are talking about getting paralleled. Describe some of those situations. Have you had it happen on your property where they're following you?
That was on my hunting lease. It was probably in December. I was hunting on a place in a box stand they call it Ricky's Road, and I heard a tree knock. And I always listen, but sometimes it's confusing. You hear the acorns hit on the palmettos. It makes a good bit of noise, but I said that wasn't a palmetto. It was right at time for me to get out the woods. It was dark. And when I came out, I hit a road. It's called the Elbow Road. And I went all the way to the elbow. And when I went to turn, I smelled it. It was no doubt. It smelled like really bad human body odor. And I'm going, oh, Lord, that sucker's following me out. So I went on out. But there was another time in West Virginia, me and my wife, did a tree knock and got a reply. And then we went up the next day on the four-wheeler and we smelled something. I asked her, "You smell that?" She said, "Yeah." And I never smelled stuff going up there. I hunted there for 20 years and never smelled anything like that.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that he followed me out from that second stand. And I kind of got nervous when I got in that elbow and I smelled that. I said, this ain't right.
Yeah.
I went on and got out.
Well, you're in areas too where you're not getting any help. You're on private land, man. This isn't run up to the ranger's office and have them call for an ambulance or something. This is a serious situation where you're in the elements with whatever's there and subject to whatever that thing's going to do. Those are very different situations. When I couldn't imagine with property and then trying to live on it and all this. That's why I think the understandings are so important. And you know, just to mention it, looking at the history of your property and where your property is concerned, has there ever been an attack from one of these creatures on anybody in your family?
The only thing close to that is somebody came to talk to me about duck hunting. And they went out there to duck hunt, and they were going to set up a tent in the area, and they had a camp there. And they said, well, the windows were broke out. And he said, well, why would camp right here? We'll go in that old camp. So they put a tent in there, and they had a lot of strange things happen. So, and nothing really, no, I'm not talking about the property. I'm talking about in the spillway duck hunt. And there was 4 people, and they all felt uneasy. It was weird. It was so bad that 2 of them didn't want to go back again the next weekend, but one guy and another one wanted to go back. So they went back, and they said when they went into the camp, they decided, well, why pitch a tent? We'll put a piece of vinyl flooring against this broken window, and we'll sleep in this room. So they took the back door, and they stood it up, and they had to lean it out against the wall, and it took 2 of them to pick it up. The camp was 4 foot off the ground. So he told me the story. He said something kept grunting and circling the camp, and he thought it was a hog or something. So whatever it was, he said, walked by that back door and hit the top of it and knocked it all the way into the hallway. And they loaded their shotguns up and said, well, we don't know who this is, but if you don't leave or don't leave us alone, we're going to shoot. It scared them that much. He said when they got their headlight and they went out in the front of the camp, he said it was like somebody took a giant piece of concrete and slammed it on the ground. They could feel it reverberate. So wow. I talked to him about that, and he thought it was haunted. Now here's the story. He thought it was haunted, but after I told him about the foot stomp I had in West Virginia, then he goes, that must be what it was. But he thought it was haunted because the person that owned the camp was found dead in there from a heart attack. I mean, it's sad. Yeah, I mean, that's the story I got. And not far from there on Fisher Bayou is where a man seen one stand up. He said it was like 6 foot or 5 foot to the top of the willows, and it was like that tall above it. And it said it dove into Fisher Bayou, swam to his boat like 30 feet or 15 feet. And they locked eyes, and there was 4 people in the boat. One was sleeping in the bottom. Swam across the bayou, got up on the other bank, and ran off. And he still talks about it to this day.
That's the story Troy said on.
Yeah, Troy mentioned that story on that show that we were on, episode 3, season 2. He mentioned his story. That's a true story.
Yeah. I remember now. So well, getting into that, right? What was that all about? What was your whole thing there with Swamp Mysteries?
Swamp Mysteries, he talks about the breaks and so when they first started that, they called me over to do the filming, and they had the scenario set up for the show, and I went and talked to Troy. I said, where y'all want to go film? We were fixing to leave and go into the area and film. He said, well, it's over here by that canal. I said, really? I said, well, they got an X over there. He said, what you mean an X? I said, well, Bigfoot makes these. Huh? I said, yeah, they'll put an X in the swamp for some reason. And that's how that got into the video. We went over there and we videoed the X. On the second shooting, something tore the X down. Now I'm gonna tell you a story. In West Virginia, me and my wife she found one X and my nephew found the other X. And this kid was smart enough to recognize that it was placed there because there was no stumps. And he told Uncle John, this was placed there. I said, really? He sent me a picture of it because we had already left. But a friend of mine went up there and filmed those 2 X's. Guess what? They disappeared.
Gone.
They tore them down. And the same thing happened in the swamp. They knocked them down. They knocked it down.
So you guys went to film it and it was gone.
The second time I went to film it, it was gone.
But you got it the first time.
The first time, yeah.
Somebody was watching. Somebody was
Oh
watching.
yeah, oh yeah, they watched.
Somebody was watching. They're like, "Oh man,
We
they
gotta get
know
rid
we're
of
here." Like taking their signs out.
Yeah, me and my wife had found that X way before the filming, so it had been there a good while. And then we filmed it and then tore it down.
So that could be that spot must be valuable, or they wouldn't have marketed it, you know.
I think they're all over there. I'm gonna try and do some research there this year.
Yeah. Yeah, that place sounds like it's got activity. If that's the family property again?
No, that's not the family property.
Oh, okay.
That's at the film location.
This is the film location. Okay.
Yeah.
And what happened with I understood that there was a dogman sighting or something. Did anything ever come of the investigation on the son seeing a dogman?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that still needs to be done.
Yeah.
That still needs to be done. That's, and I look at it like this, right? The creatures are real, or people wouldn't have passed lie detector tests on national television talking about Dogman, right? There's a Monster Quest episode where you can watch 4 people took lie detector tests, and it's not just taking the lie detector test. It's the FBI giving it, and they're on national television, and they're still passing. Like there's a lot of nerves in that, and there's for them to pass, those creatures are out there, right? That's 4 eyewitnesses, one of which saw multiple dogmen, and she passed a lie detector test. So we look at that, and if we go off of that, that's the same kind of veracity that we had when we decided to listen to eyewitnesses about where to look for Bigfoot. So.
Well, the French culture talks about the rougarou. Why?
That's right. It's real.
About the rougarou.
It's real, man. I don't necessarily know, the skin walking thing and all that stuff. And that's all, legend. I get it. I've interviewed a few people who talked about that. I interviewed a guy one time from Louisiana, said he had a salve. He could rub salve on him and change into a dog, man. Okay, man. It's getting a little crazy here. But, just looking at it, it's definitely intriguing from the tracking standpoint, because as of yet, whatever this creature is, I've been unable to consistently track it. Is it going to be harder to document Dogman than a Bigfoot? I don't know. What else you guys got, man? You guys, it seems to me that you're avid campers and avid outdoors people, and that you've experienced quite a bit where there's an invisible assailant. I
actually started watching you on another show, and then I started going over and watching what you were doing, and I found that you were going places other people weren't, and I found the techniques that you were using on the research were real scientific. So I kind of started watching you more and liking it in your pages. And I started liking and sharing on my Facebook page. But I've been watching you probably a year or a little more. I like your techniques, the way you study the creatures and the way you understand them. You don't look at it like there's some super being, that they're like an existing species that's been around for a long time. And that's pretty much how I feel about it. There's nothing magical about them. They're powerful beasts, but I think they've been here since the beginning. That unknown primate may have never really went extinct. And some of the pictures I have, I see where they look more primate, and then I see, and you have the same thing, and they look a lot human features.
Yeah, this has been a complete shock. What we were expecting was something completely. I mean, this was like to see the creatures the way they look, the actual creatures, the ones that are actually there. not the stuff everybody talks about is there. But the stuff that's actually there, it's completely different than what we thought it was going to be. And you know, I was not expecting this, you know. It's like, okay, what happens when, you know, you actually do engage in real long-term observation? What are we going to find? What is anybody going to find? You know, I mean, I had already been in the cryptozoology subject and in the circles for almost 15 years before we even went in the field. And so my head was filled with ideas about what I should expect when I do go in the field. And what I can tell you is nothing that I was expecting was what it turned out to be.
I was watching your last show where you were talking about, you always talk about the geography, but I never put it together. And I started thinking about the place that I seen one, and it had some weird things, noises and stuff happen. And it's exactly like you described. It was like next to a cypress swamp. It's like next to a cypress swamp. And then there's hardwoods and a ridge. I said, well, that's the same thing we got. You explained it more detail in your last show. I'm going, like, that must be why they're there. Because there's not a whole lot of land around there. We live in Pierre Park. So basically, we're like a ridge that runs through the swamp. And that ridge ain't very wide. It may be a quarter mile wide. And they got subdivisions and stuff. So I started thinking about that. I said, well, what Mark's saying is true. And that's where we have a lot of activity, is where that swamp is, that cypress swamp, and the smaller ridges that are out in the swamp. And I'm thinking maybe if we go in the swamp, which I don't know where these ridges are in the swamp, but there's ridges in the swamp, and I bet you they hang out there in the middle of the swamp, because hardly anybody goes out there until deer season, and they might go out there and push them off that ridge. So what you were explaining made a whole lot of sense to me, kind of like an eye opener. That's why I like to watch your show, because me and my wife are still learning, and I guess we'll always be learning, especially around the structures and stuff. I had noticed structures before when I first started. When I first had my event with the first one. So we're still learning, and you have a lot of stuff that you share that, you know, makes me aware and what to look for.
You know, what you're describing in your situation where you're having activities, it's good that you can, you know, kind of put a bit of reason behind why it continues happening there. And I'm sure that if you were to go in there and then thoroughly examine it, like if you look at satellite, you'll be able to see the topograph lines and the way they dictate the locations of the creatures. It's like one of the biggest corollaries that we found, John, is that the land and the topography works exactly the same way as you would like position your boat and use the concept of water and how it positions fish in the topograph on the bottom, right? And so you would see that the current, you know, constantly pushes through an area and shapes the bottom. And then we also have it's time, essentially. Time has worn into these areas on land. So where the topograph is concerned on land, we have water sources that slowly eat its way down, and they form these basins. And all of these things are constant in our topograph nationally. We have the exact same situations being recreated by water, essentially, weather and water and sun. And then we also have the sun's ecliptic, right? And this thing doesn't change. So we're creating the exact same diffusion lines every day. The same shadows get created in the exact same places because the topograph is what it is. Those things dictate other species, how they behave. We can examine fish, like I said, and we can see how these things are positioned in the topograph, specifically because the topograph relieves certain aspects of energy expenditure. They can duck behind a hill and the current goes over their head. Well, we have the same situations that exist on land with mammals. And we just need to determine those valuable places in the topograph where it's the same thing as finding fish, John. That's the point.
That worked for me deer hunting. I'll always had the concept, if I go through this hunt around the saddles, them deer ain't gonna go over the top. They're gonna go, they're lazy like us. They're gonna go through the saddle. Why go over the top and go through the saddle? And I'd always set up on the saddles and have luck.
There you go. You post up on the route that is basically going to give them the economy of motion. That's it. If I expend too much energy, I won't be able to run from the mountain lion. If I expend too much energy, I won't be able to run from whatever big hairy is coming down the hill. You know what I mean? And so everything has these considerations, you know what I mean? Everything. And so those are the kind of things that, and also those are tells in wildlife, right? We can tell the game is not doing what it normally does. So you staged up and you're hunting a deer and you've got your path of least resistance. You know he's coming this way at some point, probably right around that time where the light's fading and you're having trouble seeing. Here he comes. Only today, he's acting weird. And through the fog, you can hear some other junk going on in there. Right? These are the situations that hunters go through. Well, they're using the topograph the same way you do. They understand the same thing you understand. These are the ways that we find in to research the creatures. They're hunting too, and they understand that topograph to a greater degree than we do, to a greater degree, and the benefits of that topograph. Harassing you, screwing around with you, playing games with you, doing all this stuff. This is exactly the same scenario as my wife and I have, as every Sasquatch experiencer has, you know. And you've also had the benefit of seeing them, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? Describe what you've seen. Have you seen their face yet up close? Have you been able to get detail?
No, just the one on the ground. She hasn't seen it, but she's heard. She couldn't explain it. But we went back to West Virginia one time, and we experienced something we never experienced before. Whistle.
Oh, okay.
We are all up there on the mountain, and my wife says, "You whistling?" I said, "No." And my sister was there. I said, "Margo, you whistling?" "No." And then I heard a footfall. I said, "It's time to go." Yeah. So we got in the car. We went all the way down. It took us about 10, 15 minutes to get off the mountain. Got to my mom's house. I'm hearing like rifle shots, and I'm going, "What?" And I listen. It's more like a tree break. It must have been a good green tree. And I asked my sister, "You heard that?" She says, "Yeah, it sounded like somebody threw something on the roof or something." I said, "Yeah, there's something going on." So I went back to my truck to get the light. It whistled again down there. And then when we drove up, not one dog barked in the neighborhood. And when that whistle came, every dog in the neighborhood started barking. I said, "Yeah, they followed us all the way down the mountain." And
that is something.
Yeah.
So they really did follow you.
Yeah.
That's like.
Or they knew where we were going and beat us there at my mama's house.
Oh, well, I mean.
I've been getting slapped for since we went over there and started talking about Bigfoot and looking at things. When we would leave her house, we'd get slapped. She didn't know anything about Bigfoot. She'd tell John, "Something is hitting my house like early in the morning or before." And this happened several times to her since we've been over there.
Trying to Bigfoot.
Yeah.
You guys went over there Bigfooting, and now he knows you know. So he's like, "Well, come on, bring out the oatmeal. Where's the
He knows where we're staying."
I think it's 2016 in West Virginia. I had something happen to me that's really, I never thought about Bigfoot until that happened. I couldn't explain it. So I was walking in West Virginia from my parents' house to a place they used to call 5 Right. And I was coming back, and I heard tree knocks 4. And I'm going, "What is that?" And I'm thinking to myself, I never heard anything like that. It sounded like a staff being hit against the stump. So I stopped. It's late in the evening, it's dark, and I looked, couldn't see nothing. So I started walking again. Well, it did 4 more knocks just like it. And I'm going, "Oh, that don't make sense. It's got a rhythm. It's got a rhythm to it." So I stopped, looked again, didn't see nothing. And when I started walking, it threw something at me. I'm going, all right, I'm getting out of here. So I hurried up, got to my parents' house, and I told them about it. Mom said, well, you know, it's funny. A man seen Bigfoot up there by the goldfish pond. He was sleeping in his van, and it raked its finger across the side of the van and hit the antenna. And I guess they were eyeball to eyeball, and it scared him. The guy's name, I'm not going to share it, but there was also somebody up there sleeping in a tent right above him. There's a pond up there, and he was up above there, and something kept circling his tent, making him so nervous he shot at it. So those things kind of led up to me getting interested and trying to find out what's going on. So I thought, well, that's just West Virginia. Like a lot of people say, oh, that's just the Pacific Northwest. And I'm going, that's probably something just in West Virginia. Well, me and my wife, it was during the COVID, we went camping in Costashi. So nobody's at the campground. A few little campers, but the area, Red Bluff, where we were at, there was nobody there. It was just me and my wife. And about 4 o'clock in the morning, I hear, the only thing I could compare it to was like coyotes running a deer. And I said, well, that's not real unusual. But then I hear a tree crash. I said, that's unusual. So I was laying there I had a 10 millimeter. I stuck it on my chest, and I got the tent wide open except the screen. So I'm going, oh Lord. I said, I hope this ain't what I think it is. So I said, okay, man, maybe that's just coincidence. So then I hear the trash can. It's a bear-proof trash can lid. I didn't hear something fumbling to open it because we weren't far from it, and I would have heard fumbling. And I just hear, bam, it drops. I'm going, oh my goodness, what is this? There's no car drove up, no headlights. This is still in the dark at 4. And I'm going, this doesn't make any sense. So I'm sitting there waiting. Then I hear something drag its finger over my head on the tent. I said, oh my goodness. I don't know what that is. I said, there's no trees around, no bushes around me, and there's no wind. I said, none of this makes sense. So I said, that's got to be. And my wife had found a track over there the day before next to a tree. It wasn't a real big one, maybe 10 inches. So I said, okay, I guess they're in Louisiana now. So we go on another camping trip in Tunica Hills, and we sleeping. And I guess it was about 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning. It's like, this is just playing in my mind. I don't know the facts, but it's like something took a raccoon, was shaking it, and threw it into our campsite. I could see it sliding across my vision. And I go, what's going on here? So we go out there. We both had to use the bathroom. We got back, started laying down and go to sleep. And as I was falling asleep, I hear a tree knock. I said, I'm just thinking I'm dreaming. I told my wife, man, I was dreaming. I said, I heard a tree. She said, you heard it too? I said, yeah. So we get up, we look around, and we find that tree breaks around the campground. I said, they hear it. They got to be around here too. So we said, well, okay, they're in Costashi. That's in central Louisiana. So we go to the property and say, we started looking around there. We're seeing stuff. I think it all started with a tree break. Now, what takes a tree and breaks it down like that? How much force and energy does it take? I mean, snow load, I would see it bending and splitting, but to snap it snapped. I'm going, and twisted. I'm saying, that don't make sense. So we started getting curious, and I started bringing oranges out there, and I was sticking them in places and finding, this is on her family property in Louisiana, finding that something kind of like took one side of the orange peeling off and then got all the fruit out. I said, well, that don't look like a raccoon ought to chew that and chew it up. But see, I don't have knowledge of how a raccoon eats the orange or anything. So So we went out there one day and we're walking out there on foot. And I hear a real faint whoop. And I asked my wife, did you hear that? She says, no. Did you hear that whoop? No. So we keep walking, we go to the back. So I look at one of the tree breaks that's broken and twisted like we're talking about. And I hear a knock. I said, did you hear that? She said, yeah, I heard that. Okay. And then we get to the place where we're setting the oranges out. And then I hear like alligator will splash, but you'll hear like a whoosh, they'll swing their tail and throw water. Well, it was more like a plop, like a log was thrown in the canal, the 21-inch canal. I said, you heard that? She says, yeah. I said, well, I wonder what that is. And it was followed up with a scream. I'm going. She says, what is that? I said, I never heard that before. I said, it sounded like a 600-pound rabbit scream. And she heard it again, but she said it was going away from us. I said, I think we need to go. So we going out. We get back to the spot where we barely heard the whoop. I said, let's stop here for a minute and sit, just be quiet. And so we sat there for a few minutes. I said, I'm going to do a whoop. But I didn't do a loud one. I did try to mimic what I heard. So I did a whoop. And then we waited and waited. Nothing happened. So I'm going to do another one. And I think it was on the third one I did. We hear, rah, rah, rah. And then we start hearing branches breaking. And they started beating on the trees. And my wife's going, we need to go. I said, no. I said, if they wanted to kill us, we'd be dead right now. They don't want to kill us. And you can hear them going off and beating on trees until they got out of sound, I guess, range. But that was a very enlightening moment for both of us. I think she was kind of a little skeptical at that point. But after that point, all the skepticism left. So there were some other things that happened out there. We went out there one time, and I call them asterisks. It looks like a giant spider web. She found it. It's probably been there. We never noticed. And so we videoed it. I videoed it, and I took pictures of it. And she sent it off to somebody, and they sent her 4 pictures just like it out of Ohio. I said, well, this is not by accident. These, I mean, they're not exact duplicates, but a whole lot of similarities.
It's like your situation where you both came to a higher understanding of what's going on. That situation is the exact situation that my wife and I went through. We experienced several creatures, and they were around us, and they threw stuff, and they hit me and knocked me down, and then they retreated. And it was like obvious that what was going on. At that point, we were like, we found them. We found them. They're here. This is them. I mean, it was like when we were like driving home after that experience, I don't know how you guys, but it was at least an hour-long excitement conversation about, it's here. They're here. This is real. It's happening. Like we just went through this. We found a structure, got escorted out. I investigated thinking it was kids or somebody trying to scare us. And I was pissed because they scared us. So I went down in there with every intention of trying to grab somebody by their shirt and drag them out. You know what I mean? And that's what I thought. And when I went down in there and all of that ensued, which is exactly the same situation you described, including the moving off and beating on stuff and like essentially some kind of a territorial emotional display. It was a gesture. This is our area. This is our area. You could tell in their attitude, the way they were moving, the way they behaved, that we had intruded. That's the way I felt. I felt like, wow, I did something wrong here, man.
I hope not. That might shut down my career.
What I didn't realize was that they were always there. They've been there watching me film the little ones and like watching from right there the whole time. And we kept thinking, what are those big, giant, dark shit? Why is the tree so dark? You know what I mean? How we know.
Yeah, I'll start paying attention to that darkness.
Yeah. Just be careful too. That's the whole thing, right? You know, safety first. Whenever we're Bigfooting, we're taking our own lives into our own hands. And so, and really offering ourselves up to something we have no control over would be a better way to look at it. So please engage safely.
You too.
Thank you for coming, guys. I really appreciate it. I know the members are going to love this. If you have any more experiences and you want to talk about anything else, let me know because I love doing these. Okay.
Sure will.
Thank you.
It was really good. Nice meeting you for the first time today. And,
Nice meeting you.
didn't you come to one of our lectures once?
I think I did. Oh,
I think you might have made an appearance.
Yeah.
But it's good to see you again anyway. And hopefully we get to go in the field sometime. You know what I mean? I would love to take you guys in the field and show you all this firsthand. And like you can watch it happen in real time. Like right now, I'm working on a footage that Sean came. Sean's like, let's track a Bigfoot. And I was like, okay. So I took him into an area. Within 10 minutes, we're up on like, 15 inches and tracking him. I mean, it's amazing. I'd love to have that experience and do that with you guys. So if you ever, have an opportunity to come to one of our campouts, please do.
yeah.
We would love to have you.
About that.
We got some work going on. After we finish that work, we'll consider that very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for everybody here at Crypto Reality and for Melanie and I want to thank you for all your support, all of this time for trying to help us out, getting us connections, doing everything you can do. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
You're welcome. Thank y'all for all y'all do.
Yeah.
You guys have a great weekend.
You too.
You too.
We'll see you next time.
Take care.